So Mike is the trooper. I got to tell you, I've gotten to know Mike fairly well over the last few years. Mike's been around a whole for longer than I have. Been doing home inspections and been an ASHI member. He's been on the ASHI board. He's been the ASHI secretary. All around good guy, very knowledgeable, and has shared an awful lot of information with us over the last 4 years. And he's about to come on here right now and talk to us about fireplaces. So Mike, it looks like you're up and ready to go. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mike Conley. Mike.
Thank you, Hollis. I'm hoping you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Because I've been having trouble with audio lately, but I guess it's fixed. Tonight we're going to touch on, we're not going to cover a lot because Mike's moment is not designed to be long-term, but fireplaces are relatively complicated and it takes a certain amount of training, specialized training, I would say, in order to become prudent in being able to evaluate them. And we're going to touch on that a little bit tonight by talking about a couple of things that happens when you're dealing with, especially with masonry fireplaces. Although some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight also will affect modular or manufactured fireplaces. So why is this important? Well, because fireplaces can be relatively dangerous and people have died as a result of having them, unbeknownst to themselves usually. Here's some statistics that backs up my statement, where it says fireplace chimney connectors over the past years, and the number of fires that have resulted. And it's increasing, as you can see, from 2012 to 2014, the numbers are going up. What that means is more and more people are having fireplaces installed, whether they're modular or masonry. And the vast majority, of course, as you all know, are going to be modular because of the cost involved and the ease of installation. But they are going up and they don't always get put in or installed properly as they should, especially masonry. Modular, on the other hand, comes with instructions, and if you follow the instructions, you're usually pretty safe as far as doing it right. Projected fireplace market from 2018 to the future, 2023, you can see the numbers are increasing. More and more people are getting fireplaces. So it's becoming more and more important that we as inspectors know what to look for and how to evaluate them. Modular fireplaces, Heatolator is the leading brand. It's the most well-known in this country, but there are other manufacturers out there, and I'm sure depending on your market area, you're going to run into them more than you will others. I see a lot of Heatolators in my market area, and I see a couple of these others, but for the most part, a lot of them are unknown, but that's just a regional thing. You go to different parts of the country and you're going to hit different manufacturing names. They're all basically designed the same. They all have data plates on them. I don't know if any of y'all are aware of that, but they all have data plates when they come out of the factory. And that data plate tells you a lot about the manufacturing of the fireplace and what its specifications are. And one of the most important ones is the data manufacturer, which is important for us to have and be able to put in our reports. This is a 1935 masonry fireplace. It's brick and it's been parged. And you're probably wondering yourself, does a little midget go down there and start parging on his way up? No, it's parged as it's built. And you can see where some of the parging is starting to come off. And it's exposing some of the brick. Now that could be a safety factor depending on your market area. A lot of markets, a lot of municipal inspecting areas do not consider brick fireplaces safe if they don't have a liner inside of them. But that's going to vary depending on the market or the authority having jurisdiction, which is basically the municipal inspector or the fire inspector. He's going to determine whether that's in fact the case in the market area you're inspecting in. A lot of market areas or a lot of municipal or fire inspectors do not consider a bare brick fireplace a safe chimney to use. And some do, so you have to know what's acceptable in your market area.
Hey,
Forging
Mike,
is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
clarification. Are these gas or wood burning fireplaces?
These are wood burning. Good point. Okay. Thank you. Here's a bare brick with excess grout in it. Again, that would be determined by the fire marshal or the fire inspector as to whether or not that would be safe to use. There are manufactured liners that can be put in existing brick fireplaces or concrete block fireplaces that will serve the same purpose, but that's a whole different subject. We can talk about it at a later date. And I'll have more on this subject as we go along throughout the year. Here's a bare brick fireplace, wood burning fireplace, and you can see where the grout has been eaten away, and that's due to the acidity of the smoke going up the chimney, eating away at the grout slowly. And that's one reason why a liner is so important, because a liner is not affected the same way that brick or grout is. The hearth, a lot of people misconstrue this. The hearth is not the outside of the fireplace. The hearth is actually where the fire is. And what's outside the fireplace is called the hearth extension. Not a term you hear a lot, but those of you who have done some fireplace learning know this. And it's a good idea to use the proper terminology and definitions when you're writing the report. Chimney foundations. Chimney, brick or block chimneys should have their own foundation. They should be independent of the foundation of the house. If you've ever come across a chimney that's utilizing the foundation of the building as its foundation, that's wrong and dangerous. It should always have an independent foundation. Sometimes you cannot determine that, depending on where the chimney is. If it's in the center of the building, for example, the center of the living space, and there is no crawl space or area underneath the building you can access, then you're not going to be able to determine whether it has one or not. But if it's on the outside wall of a building, then you can determine it. Foundations for fireplace should be at least 12 inches deep or more, and at least 6 inches larger than the chimney on all sides. So that's easy to probe if you have a probe with you. Or it's going to be determined by the local authority having jurisdiction, which is going to be the fire marshal or the municipal inspector. Fire brick typically should be no less than 2 inches thick with an 8-inch thick wall, or 12 inches without the fire brick.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Comment that says, I see fireplaces on second floors. What about those regarding the foundation?
Well, if you follow the chimney, you're going to find that it goes down through the first floor, and then down through the foundation of the first floor, down into the cellar if it has one. And if not, then you're not going to be able to determine where it goes from there.
But it should go down through, right?
Oh yeah, you can't have a brick or concrete block fireplace sitting on construction material. It won't support the weight. A good way to determine whether it's copacetic down there is to look at the condition of the chimney, the brick chimney or the concrete block chimney. And if it's showing signs of indicators of anything, that usually means it's a foundation issue. A good example is this slide I'm showing you right now. This is a 1915 house I inspected. And you can see as you walk around the building, there's been patching done. There's ongoing cracks that's still occurring, and the chimney is separating from the building. Something I don't normally do is probe for the footer, but in this case, I suspected the footer, so I probed it and found that it has no footer under it at all. Why it lasted this long, I don't know, but it's definitely moving and dangerous to use. Here's one where they had a foundation issue and they stabilized it. It was a very minor foundation issue, so they stabilized it by putting a steel band around it and securing it inside the attic, probably onto the joists or rafters. That's a fix that some municipalities will accept and others won't. Pyrolysis. This is an important aspect of inspecting because it determines the safety of the brick or concrete block. Pyrolysis is the slow, low heat degradation of wood causing dehydration and charcoaling of the framing material. It's imperative that fireplace clearances and combustible material be protected and or have proper clearance to prevent fire. This also affects the inside of the hearth. If you poke your head inside the hearth with your flashlight and you see any kind of exposed insulation or wood framing, that is going to be a dangerous situation because those materials will be exposed to the slow heat degradation and dehydration. And once you lower that in any kind of combustible material, you lower its ignition point. Normally, wood ignites, for example, around between 400 and 500 degrees. But if it's been affected by pyrolysis or dehydration, that ignition temperature can drop down to as low as 200 degrees, which a fireplace can easily meet. So you don't want to see any kind of exposed material inside of a hearth. It should all be non-combustible material. Yes.
If you see pyrolysis on like structure somewhere, would an engineer need to sign off on it?
The short answer is no, because charring. Let's say there was a fire that reached the attic, and you go out, you're inspecting the attic, and you see charcoaling on the joists or the trusses. You can determine charcoaling on wood actually acts as a fire barrier, but it's a very, very thin layer. And once you go beyond that thin layer, then it goes into the engineering category. But if you see charcoaling on a wood, a joist up in the attic, or a rafter, or a truss, and it's only superficial, in my opinion now, you should have the ability to evaluate that, determine whether it's dangerous or not.
Okay. The follow-up was the signing off of the engineer was about the band around the chimney. You had a picture where the chimney was tied to the roof, basically.
Right.
Would an engineer need to sign off on that attachment?
It would depend on the authority having jurisdiction. Some would require engineering paperwork, and others would just say it's okay by looking at it themselves. So it depends on what part of the country you're inspecting in.
Okay. And one last thing.
Go ahead.
Are structural steel beams allowed to be supported by a chimney?
Supported by what?
A chimney, the base of the chimney, I assume, the brick.
Structural steel beams supported by the chimney brick? No, they are not. No, they are not. The exception to that would be the right angle steel that goes above a window acting as a header.
Thank you.
Efflorescence is another issue that needs to be addressed. Efflorescence is white powdery stuff that you see inside. Doesn't have to be inside the chimney, but inside the hearth, but in this case it is. And you don't want to miss that crack right there. That's going to be an important issue to report on. But what does this tell you? It tells you that moisture is coming through the block. Some water's getting in here somehow, because that's what causes efflorescence to occur. And that needs to be evaluated beyond the scope of what you're doing as a home inspection, but you are going to report it and tell your client what needs to be done. Fire brick that's damaged is another factor. You can see where the grout's missing completely here. And that's all caused by overheating. They threw too much lumber in here when they were firing it up, and that caused damage to occur. You can see where the grout's dripping out right here. That's from overheating. Same hearth with a different view. This is a dangerous hearth to burn anything in, and the likelihood of a fire, if they don't heed your warning, is pretty high. Fire brick. It's different from regular brick in that it has no air entrained into it. It can withstand high heat, has low thermal conductivity. Fire brick can be laid either flat or on edge, as long as it's no thinner than 2 inches thickness. The minimum, that's what that next statement says. Minimum thickness is 2 inches, of course. In addition, the chimney liner should have a minimum of half-inch spacing between itself and the inside of the chimney brick. So let's say you have a concrete block chimney and you poke your head inside and you see there's a brick in there. The brick and the concrete block should not be in contact with itself, because that'll transmit a certain amount of heat. That's where that half-inch space comes in. It acts as a cooling space. And you can go as much as 4 inches of clearance if you want to, but that's kind of just wasting space. And I, quite honestly, I've never seen a chimney with that kind of clearance in it. A ½ inch to an inch is pretty common. A flue should terminate 6 to 12 inches above the top of the chimney. This is not doing that. This is not doing that. This is not doing that. That's a beautiful chimney, by the way, but it needs a new top. It needs a new cover on it. Creosote. What makes up creosote? Mostly composed of carbon, but also consists of ashes and other byproducts from the burning of fire. This substance builds up in chimneys and flues while the fire is burning, and an excessive buildup of creosote can be a fire hazard. It's very, very combustible. And it only takes as little as an 1/8 inch of thickness for it to start considering ignition. So when you're seeing flues on the inside of chimneys with creosote being built up, you ought to call it out as a safety feature. Warn your clients not to use the fireplace until it's serviced. In the summertime, that's not a big deal. In the wintertime, it's more important because that's when people tend to use their fireplaces. The shiny black stuff, creosote. The dull black stuff, soot. Soot is not a combustible. Creosote is. Massive buildup of creosote. In the early years of our existence, creosote was used as an insecticide, a fungicide, and a herbicide, and it still is in some parts of the country. It was used as a wood preservative for poles and pilings, like telephone poles, and it's still used today for that. It's a substance that can cause convulsions, skin and eye damage, so you really don't want it on your person. It's a disinfectant, a laxative, and a cough treatment. People actually used to consume this stuff in the old days. They don't do that anymore. It's a substance that causes skin cancer, a byproduct of wood burning in a fireplace, of course, and a combustible and coating of flue. All of these things apply to creosote. Dangerous when it accumulates within a chimney. The primary danger of creosote is that it is extremely flammable. In the United States alone, an estimated 25,000 chimney fires are caused by creosote ignition each year. That's a lot. You don't want to be the inspector that did that house the day after or the day before they had the fire. More buildup. This is so bad it's spilling out of the joints in an attic. This is the result. Thank you.